this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Why have we asked our contractor we found on Angie.com to be our kids' legal guardian? Because he took such good care when redoing our basement that we knew we could trust him to care for our kids, all 8 of them, should something happen to us.
Are you my dad now?
No, sorry, I do basements. Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now, you call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
Welcome to One Thing Trump Did, available exclusively on the Middle podcast feed. I'm Jeremy Hobson. And, you know, these days with everything going on, people sometimes come up to me and they say, hey, Jeremy, what do you think of this? What do you think is going on here? And I cannot tell you how many people did that with our topic today. They said, why is Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, formerly Secretary of Defense, calling all the generals and admirals from around the world to Washington at the same time? Isn't this dangerous? This was before it happened. Now we know that he did that in part to tell them that they need to work out more and not be so fat. He really did say that. He talked about an overhaul of fitness and grooming standards, including the establishment of fitness tests and a gender-neutral male level standard for physical fitness in combat. He also announced a review of definitions for toxic leadership and bullying and hazing and harassment to reduce what he called frivolous complaints. Listen here to Pete Hegseth.
The era of politically correct, overly sensitive, don't hurt anyone's feelings leadership ends right now. For too long, we've promoted too many uniformed leaders for the wrong reasons, based on their race, based on gender quotas, based on historic so-called firsts. This administration has done a great deal from day one to remove the social justice, politically correct, and toxic ideological garbage that had infected our department, to rip out the politics. No more identity months, DEI offices, dudes in dresses. No more climate change worship. No more division, distraction, or gender delusions. But when it comes to any job that requires physical power to perform in combat, those physical standards must be high and gender neutral. If women can make it, excellent. If not, it is what it is.
So a lot there. Let's talk about it with Janessa Goldbeck, CEO of the Vet Voice Foundation and a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. Janessa, it's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
Well, first off, is this what you thought that Pete Hegseth would be talking with all the senior military leadership about when he flew them in from all over the world?
It wasn't entirely clear to me or anyone else what the meeting was going to be about, but I certainly hoped it was something that was so important that it had to be a meeting. It couldn't have been an email. You know, this was basically what amounted to a junior officers pep rally in front of some of the most serious decorated members of our national security apparatus. What an enormous waste of time, taxpayer dollars, and frankly, a completely needless risk in terms of operational security to bring them all in. Many of them flew in commercial. I mean, think about just the security at the various airports they were coming through. Just an absolute vanity show.
Well, let's talk about the specifics of what he's talking about here. The grooming standards, for one thing. Is that a big deal that he's saying no more beards in the military except for special forces?
It is, but I think we're sort of missing the forest for the trees starting there, which is Pete Hegseth's vision of the military is for it to be a 1980s cartoon, a white nationalist force where every person who serves is a square-jawed white male. And he has been taking action to cull it into that vision, guising it under his merit-based leadership approach and lethality. The reality is the people who are authorized to wear beards in the military are people who have a skin condition that causes them to break out in very painful sores that can get easily infected. And so the military for many years has allowed people who have that skin condition to request something called a no-shave chit, so they don't have to shave, and they can keep a neatly trimmed beard in order to maintain their appearance and be fit and ready for all types of service. The vast majority of people who have that skin condition are Black men. So going after beards specifically isn't about a return to lethality or some sloppiness in the force. It is a very specific way to get rid of Black men. And I think that the fact that that hasn't been more widely reported is a real shame, and I'm glad I have the opportunity to talk about it here.
Well, the other class of people, I guess, that have beards, I was just reading about this the other day, are Sikh men who keep it for religious purposes. And there was a Sikh soldier who was quoted in a newspaper saying that this was a real insult to people like him who have been in the military serving the United States, and now they're being told that no more beardos is what Hegseth said.
Absolutely. I mean, this is part of the broader context, right? This is a person of color whose faith is not Christianity. This is a very easy way for the Secretary of Defense to go after him. And I look around the world and you see militaries with plenty of discipline, plenty of great military history and tradition where the men keep tight, even beards. This is not a lethality issue. This is not an issue in the military. This is something that he's chosen to pick up on. He is going after these culture wars, trying to create this idea that the military has been infected with woke ideology. I mean, are we going to go all the way back to 1948 when President Truman desegregated the armed forces and say every promotion since then has been the result of woke ideology through the Korean War, through the Vietnam War, through the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan? I mean, I frankly think it is so insulting for him to stand up in front of those generals and flag officers who have served 20, 30 years honorably in uniform, trying to train and retain the best possible fighting force that has led us to have the most professional, lethal fighting force in the world in the United States military, and to say that somehow all of those decisions and promotions should be questioned.
Well, help us understand, just for people who are not in the military and haven't been in the military, why the grooming standards in particular are so important. Just in general, even if you have exceptions, why does it matter so much that all of the armed members of the armed services are clean cut?
Well, it really stems back, the facial hair conversation stems back to gas masks. In order for a gas mask to fit your face and create a perfect seal, having facial hair can interrupt that. But how many members of our troops right now are stationed in places where having a gas mask on hand and necessary to their ability to do their jobs is necessary? A very, very small minority of them have that requirement. And so if you're telling me that we need to kick out a sergeant in the U.S. Army who has served honorably, has performed their job exceptionally, has served 7, 8, 9 years, and is stationed in North Carolina, that we have to kick him out because a gas mask doesn't seal over his beard. I mean, what an incredible waste of time, talent, and resources.
What about the physical fitness standards, Janessa? Hegseth said he didn't want any fat generals. For context, when he came into office, he announced big cuts to the top military brass, ordering a 20% cut in the number of active duty 4-star generals and admirals. Is the fitness standard a way to just get rid of more people, or what do you think that's about?
I think the fitness standard is a red herring for cutting out women, frankly. First of all, there are a couple of things that he's relitigating that have already been litigated. When he stands up on stage and says there should be one standard for combat arms professions, that has been the case since the repeal of the combat exclusion policy over a decade ago. The combat exclusion policy was a policy that was put in place that said women couldn't serve in certain combat arms jobs in the military. It was overturned over a decade ago, and since then women have been serving honorably and exceptionally as tank officers and infantry officers and rangers, meeting one gender-neutral combat standard in order to qualify for that job. Now, are there normed physical fitness tests that occur every year? Yes, there are, because women and men are physiologically different. And so to gauge the fitness of a woman at age 40 performing a certain job is different than that of a man. But they still both have to meet the gender-neutral standard of having that job in the first place. So he's basically talking about an issue that doesn't exist. He has this real antipathy towards women in service. We've heard it through all of his remarks that he's made over the course of his career, both before he was the secretary and when he was at Fox News. And so this is a way for him to attack women while cloaking it in a conversation about merit.
Well, and there are, I was reading, more than 200,000 women in active duty in the military right now, and several thousand in combat roles among them.
That's right. And after 9/11, what exactly was a combat arms role really changed. And this is why the policy was eventually rescinded. You could be a logistician, and that's not a combat arms job by classification, driving a convoy down a road in Iraq, encounter an IED and insurgents, return fire, take fire. Is that not a combat arms position simply because you have the title of logistician? In the modern world, modern warfare, there really aren't these clear front lines like there were in World War II. And so we had to necessarily adapt. The Department of Defense had to necessarily adapt to have enough talented people to serve in all of these roles that may encounter combat, which is why as a Marine Corps officer, every Marine Corps officer goes through the same 6-month basic combat officer training program, because even if you are a adjutant, someone who works, in an office supporting service members' pay and benefits and all of that, there might be a time where you're forward deployed and you take fire and you need to return fire. So really, this demonstrates to me that Pete Hegseth has a very immature view of what the modern military is, where our mission sets lie. He has this vision that everybody, and only certain types of people are able to fulfill these roles, when in reality the whole sort of modern battlefield has the potential for somebody to need to be able to engage. And that's why the military adapted, not because of woke ideology, but because it was a necessity to fulfill the mission.
Another notable part of his speech to the generals and the admirals was a big shift in how military leaders are being instructed to approach harassment and toxic behavior or complaints about those things. How do you expect that change will impact the military culture, especially with issues like sexual harassment, which we've heard so much about in the military over recent years?
Well, I always think about how the example of leadership impacts those at the very bottom of the food chain. The 17, 18, 19-year-old private first class who's coming into the military, who has zero power, zero voice, and has to just kind of be part of the machine. And when the President of the United States or the Secretary of Defense get on a stage and they say that we should relax the standards of harassment, that we should allow drill instructors to put their hands on recruits, something that has not been the case for decades, what does that mean to the young person at the very bottom who is now getting that message is being reinforced through the ranks to the 20-year-old sergeant who might have authority over them, who thinks, oh, Pete Hegseth says it's okay for me to harass or hit somebody below me. Only a bully thinks that bullying is something that shows strength. Like, this is really, to me, the nut at the heart of Pete Hegseth.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and Talkspace, the leading virtual therapy provider, is sharing the message that connection is crucial, because good relationships are an essential and sometimes overlooked component of mental well-being. If your relationships could use some strengthening, a licensed therapist from Talkspace can help. Therapy can help you communicate better with loved ones, repair conflicts, and understand how to address loneliness and build community. It's easy to sign up. Just go to Talkspace.com and you'll be paired with a therapist within 2 days. You'll meet with your therapist online on your schedule. Plus, Talkspace is in-network with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. Make personal connections a priority and start today. If you're not covered by insurance, get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com and enter promo code SPACE80. That's SPACE80. To match with a licensed therapist today, go to Talkspace.com and enter promo code SPACE80.
Heart is just this deep, deep insecurity that thinks being a tough guy is the ability to bully and harass and commit violence with no recourse or repercussions.
What about, though, his point about this, which is that, maybe higher up people in the military having to walk on eggshells because they're worried about frivolous complaints coming from people below them, and it can stop them from being able to do their jobs?
Yeah, let's have a robust and efficient system for prosecuting those complaints, make sure that the system is fair. I have not heard a single senior military leader ever testify that they are not able to do their operational job because they're afraid of a harassment complaint. What I have heard them testify about is how throughout the force we have an issue with sexual harassment, we have an issue with mental health amongst our troops, we have issues with toxic leadership, and all of those things have a much greater impact on the readiness of the American military than the feelings of a senior leader. And frankly, that could happen at any time to anyone. Do your job well, be a good person, and I trust that we have a bigger issue with our junior service members being targeted by senior leaders who feel like they have impunity to do so, and that's only going to increase with this sort of green light that Secretary Hegseth has given.
Well, stay with us, because in a minute we're going to talk about how all this was received in the room and some of the even bigger changes that have been happening at the Pentagon under Pete Hegseth. One thing Trump did with Vet Voice Foundation CEO Janessa Goldbeck. We'll be right back.
Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Why have I asked my electrician I found on Angie.com to bury my pet hamster Nibbles in our yard for me? Because I was so moved by how carefully he buried my electrical wires, I knew I could trust him to bury my sweet Nibbles after his untimely end. Nibbles, gone too soon. May he scurry in peace.
Hey, sorry about your pet, but I just wire stuff.
Nibbles would have loved you like a brother.
Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
How do you make chicken nuggets like 7,000% better? Short answer, you let Taco Bell make them. Long answer, start with all white meat chicken nuggets, bread them in crunchy tortilla chips, and serve them with Hidden Valley Diablo Ranch. Yep, that's Hidden Valley Ranch mixed with Taco Bell Diablo sauce. It's exactly what it sounds like, and somehow even better. Simple math, spicy results. Crispy chicken nuggets from Taco Bell. A brand new classic. At participating U.S. Taco Bell locations for a limited time only, while supplies last.
Ever wonder why so many people regain weight after stopping a GLP-1? Up to 40% of the weight lost can come from lean muscle. This weakens the body, slows metabolism, and makes it easier to put the pounds back on, creating a cycle of dependency. Prolon's 5-day fasting-mimicking diet offers a drug-free way to maintain results and support long-term metabolic health. In just 5 days, it activates fasting pathways to burn fat, protect muscle, and rejuvenate cells, all while letting you enjoy real food. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/iHeart. That's prolonlife.com/iHeart.
Welcome back to One Thing Trump Did exclusively on the Middle podcast feed. I'm Jeremy Hobson. In this episode, we're talking about the changes that Secretary of War or Secretary of Defense, depending on who you're talking to, Pete Hegseth, is making in the military. I'm joined by Janessa Goldbeck, the CEO of the Vet Voice Foundation and a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. And as you know, Janessa, Trump renamed the Defense Department the War Department, which is what it used to be called. But Congress hasn't made that change yet, so it's still kind of both. What do you think is the significance of that change?
I think it's such a waste of time and energy and a distraction, frankly. This is, of all the things that the Trump administration is doing and Secretary Hegseth is doing, this is the one that I roll my eyes the hardest at. Okay, he wants to call it the Department of War. He wants to waste, I think it's been calculated, over $1 billion at changing signs. Okay, this is just another example of how this administration and these two individuals in particular, they are not thinking about the greater cause. They are not thinking about strengthening the institution. They're thinking about themselves and how to make themselves look cool. And I guess that's worth it to them.
So as we hear you say this, you don't hear it the way that you're saying it from many members of the military. Obviously, they have to be very careful about what they're saying. You're out of the military now and running the Vet Voice Foundation. But one thing that was interesting about the speeches that Trump and Hegseth gave to all these people in the top leadership of the military was there was no clapping, there was no laughing, no response of any kind. They were stone-faced. What did you take away from the response in the room and some of the anonymous comments to news outlets afterwards where people were really like, why did he bring us here?
Well, I think it's a testament to the professionalism of people who have served and dedicated their lives to achieving the ranks that they're at now. It is normal for general officers, if they are put into a space where there is partisan politics, like the State of the Union, to sit silently, stone-faced. Right. If you think about the chairman of the Joint Chiefs or the others who are
the Supreme Court heads, too, they have to sit silently.
They sit silently. That is because it is a norm and tradition in American society that we have this real apolitical military. That is, again, why we have the most professional fighting force in the world, because you don't want to be thinking about, is my commanding officer a Republican or a Democrat? That really doesn't matter when you're trying to accomplish a mission, and especially if that's a tough and dangerous and dirty mission. But what Trump is trying to do is reshape the U.S. military into his own personal police force and to make it seem like the generals all belong to him. So I think it was a real, our general officer corps displayed real discipline by sitting there maintaining that, knowing that they were being used as a political prop, whether or not they agree with the president or not in terms of his ideology and worldview. I do think that everyone in that room knew that it was important for them to remain neutral and look apolitical.
Janessa, one thing that Hegseth has gotten credit for is that military enrollment is up after being down for a few years. Do you think that stuff like what he did in front of the generals or calling it the Department of War, even if it annoys people like you, helps get people interested in joining?
Well, first off, I think there's been a significant and sustained push to increase recruitment over the last several years. So definitely Pete Hegseth is reaping the benefits of that increased investment and some of the changes in tactics that were put in place in previous administrations. But I do also think that he is speaking directly to young men, and that there is a reality that photo op and his TED Talk style speech and calling generals fatties and, FAFO and all this stuff that's meme culture oriented is speaking directly to a certain type of young man. And that his intent is to do just that, is to reshape the American military, as I mentioned earlier, into a white Christian nationalist force that shares his worldview. And that, I think, is really dangerous. I think that what they're doing is potentially causing generational harm to the U.S. military, but also it's imperative that folks who might not agree with Pete Hegseth, might agree with more with what I'm saying, find a way to also talk to young men in a way that showcases a different form of masculinity, one that isn't driven by ego and, this tough guy machismo, that has zero empathy and doesn't see diversity as a strength.
A lot of people have made fun of the fact that Hegseth was a weekend anchor at Fox News before becoming the Secretary of Defense. But if you look at two of his recent predecessors, Lloyd Austin and James Mattis, Congress had to do waivers for both of them because the Secretary of Defense is supposed to be a civilian and they were generals. They come out of the military. Do you think at least it's good that Hegseth is a civilian rather than somebody that needed a waiver?
I'll give him that. I do think it was a mistake to put generals in charge, regardless of their qualifications. On the battlefield, we are supposed to be led by civilians. That is, again, part of our norms and culture as a society, in a free and fair democratic society, that we have a civilian-led military. I think it was a mistake to put generals at the helm. And so if I'm going to give Pete Hegseth any flowers, I guess I could give him the smallest one and say at least he's a civilian.
Okay. Fair enough. Janessa, I've brought up a lot, and this is me coming. I do not have a background in the military, although I have covered the military for many years. I have many friends who have been in the military. I'm fascinated by it, but I'm not an expert. And I wonder, what other things are you thinking about on a daily basis at Vet Voice Foundation when it comes to the military today that we did not bring up in this conversation?
Well, I'm really worried about the politicization of the military writ large. We've seen this administration take a number of actions that are just so out of step with anything we've ever seen before, whether it's the firing of general officers because they're not deemed sufficiently loyal, the firing of inspectors general who sort of weigh the ethics of particular decisions within the military, the very partisan political rally at Fort Bragg that President Trump held in front of uniformed service members where they were laughing and clapping along with a lot of partisan talking points. All of those things are very dangerous. And probably the biggest one is the deployment of the National Guard into American cities and the increasing militarization of domestic immigration enforcement. This is not what the National Guard is for. The National Guard is comprised of young men and women, for the most part, from working and middle-class families who signed up to protect the homeland overseas or respond to things like natural disasters, not to police their neighbors, not to serve alongside ICE agents, and certainly not to do so in a way that is inflammatory. When local leaders and local law enforcement are saying this is inflammatory to have the Guard here, that puts them in a really dangerous position, injects them right into the middle of partisan politics. And so I'm pretty worried about that.
Do you think, though, that the military so far and the National Guard, on the individual level and overall, are doing a good job in resisting the politicization, the pressure for that's coming from the administration?
Well, I want to give a lot of kudos to the leadership in the various National Guard units that have been deployed, because what could have been very escalatory situations in places like Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., we've seen troops be very disciplined. We've seen, we haven't seen an escalation that could have existed. And so I think that is a testament to National Guard leadership and those small unit commanders who are really setting the tone for their soldiers and others who are deployed. But it's, the fact that they are in those positions in the first place is really that all the blame there lies at the feet of the president. And I think it demonstrates that he doesn't care about these people. For him, it isn't about, giving veterans or giving National Guardsmen something to do. These are, they're picking up trash on the National Mall. They're calling them the National Gardeners on the internet. Like, this is not what the Guard is for. And it is a waste of time, resources, and it's frankly extraordinarily bad for morale when people are deployed away from their families, away from their jobs, not having health care because their orders are not long enough for them to earn health care. And for what? For a partisan political stunt.
Do you think that the military is currently prepared for the threats that the country faces right now?
I'm really concerned. Our national security strategy that this administration put out has redirected our efforts away from our near-peer adversaries in China and Russia and elsewhere around the globe and to the domestic homeland. When the president of the United States goes up on TV and says, we're focused on the enemy within, the enemy within who is hard to find because they don't wear uniforms. When he talks about the radical left, that is incredibly dangerous rhetoric. And especially in this time that we're in, where we're seeing this uptick in political violence, I'm very concerned that we've taken our eye off the ball, that we are allocating all of these resources to domestic enforcement in a way that is going to make us very vulnerable to outside attack.
That's Janessa Goldbeck, who is the CEO of the Vet Voice Foundation, a veteran of the Marine Corps. Janessa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeremy.
And thanks to you for listening to One Thing Trump Did. It was produced by Harrison Patino. Our next middle episode is coming to your podcast feed later this week. And please rate this podcast, write a review wherever you get your podcasts. Our theme music was composed by Noah Haidu. I'm Jeremy Hobson, and I will talk to you soon.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather. In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from the commune.
It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to everybody.
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'm going back to my hometown to uncover the truth. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.